Hi everyone, I'm Richard Clark. I work for Provar Testing, the number one test automation tool for Salesforce. And I want to share with you today my secrets of Service Cloud success. And this is based on a rollout we did internally at Provar last year, where we introduced Service Cloud for our customers and the community. Anyone that knows me would probably tell you I am passionate about automation, no surprise there. But they might also tell you that I'm very bad at following instructions. I'm very bad at following the script or being told what to do. And for that reason, when we rolled out Service Cloud at Provar, what I wanted to do is make sure that none of my team, none of our customer success team, also had to follow a script. So I wanted to automate as much as possible. So today I'm going to share with you as much of that as possible. So I'm going to share with you my 6 secrets. If you want a summary in 60 seconds, here it is. Managed to get through that mouthful. So step 1 is about account entitlements. So both what are the options for declaratively and programmatically for implementing entitlements at the account level. Once you've got your entitlements on an account, how do you then make sure it's picked up for every case that's created? So it's not always automatic depending on the channel that that case is created on. And once you've got your case, how do you ensure that the case path doesn't just reflect the steps that can be taken, but actually the steps that were taken? So linking in case path and the status to represent the actions that your team have taken to interact and support that customer. That segues nicely into milestones. Now, for me, milestones is a very powerful and very underutilized feature that's more complex than it really should be. And one of the reasons for that is it can be very difficult to know if those milestones were completed based on someone clicking a link on the screen or an automation of a process. So if we automate that, we can know that that has been done on time, that milestone was completed and it can be trusted. In addition, most customers have a process where they want to measure their service level agreements to their customers, but you don't want to measure necessarily how long the customer's taken to respond. They can take their time if they want to. So we're going to look at the SLA clock of how we stop counting how much time a case is with our support team when it's with the customer, but also ensure that when they do get back in touch, that we automatically unfreeze that and the clock starts ticking again for our customer service team. And then finally, we're going to look at case closure. So we're going to look at the reasons for case closure when a issue's been resolved. So that's a good reason. When do we do it? What window do we give customers? And how do we automatically close those? And also, if customers' non-responses, if they're ghosting you, if the issue's been fixed, but they just haven't got time to respond, then how do we also deal with those as well? On to our first item then, automating your entitlement creation. Now, in order to do this, whether it's the account object or you're doing entitlements at the asset or at the contract level, you need to create a junction object to represent that SLA process tied to that account. And we can do this very simply by inserting or updating, if they've already got an entitlement, maybe extending it, when an opportunity is closed won or an order is fulfilled. That's how we're doing it at Provar. So if we get a new customer at closed won, we want to actually make them entitled to support. Equally, if we've got a add-on order, we may want to upgrade a customer and change the level of entitlement. Now, you could do some of this with entitlement templates. That's a feature, declarative feature, nothing wrong with that. It didn't meet my needs, so we had to automate it. So my options to automate it were to use pure Apex, to use Flow, but what I chose to use was Process Builder and Invocable Apex. And the reason for doing that is we already had a Process Builder process for our opportunity closed won stage. So I wanted to make use of the processes that are already there and extend them and control the order of execution. So as we'll see in a second, I've got a process builder flow for account management, optimize my single process per object wherever I can. And I've got a entitlement helper Apex class, which exposes a method called manage entitlement as an invocable Apex method. In addition to that, I've got an inner class within that exposes the attributes I want to pass in. So if you know anything about invocable Apex, if you want to pass multiple attributes, you need to pass it within a structure. And that structure in this case is an inner class. So let's look at that in more detail. Over on the left here, we can see my process. So on the account object. And I've got 2 decisions. The first is deciding if the account's just been activated. But actually, I've got another one if the account's deactivated. So if a customer unfortunately churns, if that ever happens, then I actually want to stop giving them support as well. Or maybe I would give them a reduced level of support. Your business processes are your own. In either case, I've got an invocable Apex action, which is quite simply, what do I want to give it a name? I've then selected which Apex class, which Apex method it links to, and that has given me the SLA process name, the account record, and the flag I've got whether to activate or deactivate the process, sorry, the SLA. If I look at that in more detail, the Apex class, this is the inner class. So very simple, same 3 attributes we just saw that gets pulled up automatically in Process Builder. It's quite a nice feature. And here we've got the meat of it really. So this is where I abstract information. This is the invocable method that I've got to a nice label and description. And quite simply, because entitlement requests could be a collection, it could be more than one in theory. In reality, with Process Builder, this is never going to be more than one, but for sake of argument, I've written it in a way that it can be. I then take the collection of accounts to be entitlements to be provisioned and call those, and I call the ones that need to be terminated as well. Now, the rest of the code behind this is available at the end of the session. So I've got some links, I've got a unmanaged package and a DX project you can use if you're interested in the code that's behind this. That brings us on to our second step. So my second step is around the entitlement after it's been created on the account, how it then gets on the case. And I'll be doing a demo in a few minutes that shows you this whole process linked up from start to finish. So we've got an entitlement on the account. If a case comes in from email via an API call, in Provar, we've got a link in our product where if you press a button, it will send us a case. Those won't automatically pick up your account entitlement. If I use Salesforce in my browser, it will pick up, it will know the account entitlement, it will populate it for me. So with these channels, what we found was that a support agent would have to manually select the correct entitlement. So to avoid that issue, plus to ensure that the milestone, the SLA clock, starts as soon as we receive the case, I wanted to automate this. And I've done it in our case based on the selection of the account. I've chosen to do it in Apex, and we're going to look at the code for that in a minute. I'm going to walk through that in a bit more detail. But you could equally have chosen to use Process Builder and Invocable Apex again. Case was new to us. I didn't have an existing process for it. Didn't seem any point creating one just to then call some Apex, or potentially in Flow. So when I wrote this, we didn't have before triggers in Flow. Potentially you could rewrite this in Flow now as well. One gotcha to beware of though is the order of execution. Salesforce will populate the contact for you if it recognizes the email address, say for emailed case, and it's unique. If it doesn't recognize the email address, then the account and contact are not going to be populated for you automatically. If it does recognize and find the contact, it sets the account at the end of the case update. So that means you may not see that there's an account populated on that contact, even though it appears on the screen. What you have to think about is, do you need to make your Apex code or your process builder recursive to handle that situation? So do beware of that. You may get caught up by that one. If we look at this in more detail, what I'm going to do is open a quick video of this code in action. So bear with me and I'll talk you through it. So here's my case trigger. I tend to use a pattern where I have the case triggers as lightweight as possible, and I keep my inserts and updates separate. Other people follow other trigger patterns. Ultimately, what we're doing is calling the same method in my helper class here, which is taking a list of cases. And what I now need to do is build up a list of the accounts that I've got within this case list so that I can find all the entitlements for those accounts. And this is just building those up. And it's dealing with a case where the account field is populated and when it's not yet populated. So I'm finding all those in here. We're then going to select all the entitlements for all the accounts that I know within this case list. And I'm then going to loop through all the cases. Oh, by the way, obviously I'm looking for entitlements that are active, future dated. And then I'm going to loop through all the cases. And for each case, I'm going to find the matching account for that case. And I'm going to set the case entitlement ID. So pretty simple code. I've tried to put lots of comments in there to explain it. And again, the code is all available at the end of the session. Let's go back to our slides for a second. Now I want to talk to you about case path automation. So the status on a case is very powerful, and the path feature in Lightning is extremely good for representing where you are in a process. But we can also use it to automate the actual transitions between our status so that it looks visually to the user that things are happening magically in the background. We're going to see a demo of that in a few minutes. So what I needed to do is to encapsulate all the transition events for our business. So what were the interactions we were having with our customers that meant I needed to do something to the case? For example, was it when the case was edited? Was it when one of our support staff added a case comment? Was it when the customer adds a case comment? Was it an email message being exchanged, either sent or received? Was it a chatter feed post? Was it an activity being completed? So you can see there's a wide variety of things here, and all of these might mean there's an interaction with the customer that you want to record and want to transition your case status to reflect. Now, there's a couple of implementation options. I've highlighted both of these because they're both viable. And I implemented the first one using Process Builder. And after I finished it, I wished I'd implemented it as Apex. Not just because I'm a developer at heart, but actually because I found there was a greater reuse. It would be easier for me to maintain. If you're an admin, then you may well find Flow's a better answer for you. Another thing to be aware of, a gotcha, is that if you are having your business process relating to something like a chatter comment, you cannot do Process Builder on chatter comments. Okay, it's not available as a selection, so you will be precluded doing that. If we look at how I originally built it in Process Builder, what I had was multiple processes, one for email, one for case comment, one for feed item, one for case, one for something else as well. Can't remember now. Oh, case update. And we had initial response. So I had the determination that this was the first time we were responding to this case, i.e. the case was new and no other email or interaction had been performed. So the first thing we do there is we set the case to in progress. That moves it along the path for us. The other thing we happen to be doing here is setting the case owner. So at Proval, we make the case sticky. As soon as someone's handled that case, they become the owner for it. They certainly have ways to transfer it, but they can't put it back on the queue, for example. Now, the logic here under email, case comment, feed item is basically the same. And if I had 5 interactions, especially activities, then this all becomes very messy to maintain. What I should have done is use Apex. And if I'd used Apex, I would have had a trigger for each of those S objects in the pattern you just saw in number 2. For each of those, I'd have a helper class. That's the pattern that we implement here at Proval for our Apex code. And that helper class really just needs to delegate that to a service that I've got, my case status helper, which has a handle event, which contains all the information that I've just had, all the business rules that I had about first contact, about updates. I could have encapsulated all within that one class, in that one method. And that would have made it much easier for me to maintain this going forward. So lesson learned for you, don't do as I did, do as I say. Just a quick recap then, we're about halfway through. The account entitlements is about creating that entitlement on the account automatically when we have a new customer, triggered maybe on an opportunity close one. Case entitlements, taking that entitlement from the account and making sure when a case is created, that it's selected the correct entitlement, is pre-populated so our agents don't have to do it manually. Then the case path, making sure we can transition across the path based on the business events or interactions that are your own business rules for how you want to run your customer service. Now we're going to talk about milestones, and related to milestones, we're going to talk about how they could be marked as complete. We're going to talk about the SLA clock, about stopping and restarting that clock based on those interactions. And we're going to look at case close, both when you've resolved an issue or when you've had an issue open for a long time, the clock stopped and you're getting no response, being ghosted. Firstly then, Milestone Autocomplete. If you're not familiar with milestones, you may have seen it in demonstrations. Milestones is this feature where you can basically represent an internal or an external SLA within a case and have a countdown clock in real time that's showing you the amount of time remaining before you breach or the next event's triggered. And you can have logic around acting on when those breaches occur. It's quite good for reporting. Most customer service organizations should be making use of milestones if they're not already. Now, unfortunately, out of the box, if I've got a milestone on the screen and I'm a customer service agent and I respond to the customer, I send them an email. If I forget to mark completed, I'm still in that status until I hit that link. And I don't think that's a good solution. And a lot of people don't implement milestones, maybe they don't really be automated. Now, there is the Admin Guide to Entitlements, white paper or guide, very good guide. Most of it's really good content. Unfortunately, it recommends doing Apex. And I have a problem with that because it's an admin guide. Not only that, the Apex it contains is actually incorrect and doesn't contain a unit test. So if you are an admin, you're going to hit a blocker on that one. If you do want to use code to control this, then I've got a link at the end. Someone else has published a full guide with the corrected apex, with the correct unit tests, so you can use that. So what we're going to do is we're going to combine this with the case status, the path automation we just saw, and I'm going to mark the milestone as completed, but I'm actually going to do it using Process Builder because it's incredibly simple, so I don't have to write any apex. If I had a process where lots of case records were going to be updated, maybe a batch process, maybe cleaning out cases that were spam email or something, I would probably then consider using apex to manage those, to trigger those milestone completions. So it does depend on your use case, it does depend on your volumes, it does depend on how much bulk actions you perform. So here's my process builder solution. And within here, I've got my milestone first response. So we've sort of looked already about that first response. This is on my case. And on that, what I need to do is set the milestone to completed. We can see on the right-hand side here, my record is my case milestones. So that's multiple records related to my case object the process is on. And I'm just making sure I'm only going to change those milestones that are already open. So in my case, I only have one. If you have multiple, you might need to select a different one. And all I need to do to complete that milestone, all I need to do to tick that link, to press that link, is set the completion date to now. It's that simple. And I basically have the same solution when we resolve a case. And anywhere else I want to use the same action, it's a very, very simple action. So I do recommend, if you can do this declaratively, it's a much quicker option. And of course, you don't have to write any unit tests for it. Number 5, then, we're going to link through to where we stop and start that SLA clock. So at Provar, we want to pause the SLA clock when we're waiting for a customer to respond. I do not want to penalize the KPIs of my customer success team based on how long a customer takes to respond. I can send follow-up emails automatically to try and encourage the customer to respond. I don't need my staff to be remembering to send things after 5 days, and I don't want to measure their performance on whether they've managed to close, how many cases they've closed this week. That's not their job. Their job is to provide answers to customers, not just close cases. There is a case stopped field, which is very handy. So the case stopped field, when set, actually starts a clock on the screen, which you can see, which shows how long that case has been stopped. Unfortunately, that feature doesn't actually tie up with milestones. The two things are completely independent features. So if you try and report across both, you'll get some very strange results. So what I wanted to do is be able to use both of those things and automate both of those things together. So what I had to understand was the events that might trigger a case to be stopped and started, and I needed to hook those up. And in my example today, I've got, if I contact a customer twice in a row and they don't respond, I put it on hold. That's quite brutal. Probably wouldn't do that in real life, but that's what I did for the purpose of the example today. What I could have also done is update the case milestone record itself with the target date. So I could have moved that clock back. If I wanted to keep a milestone open, you can actually do that as well as an option. So I'm combining this with the previous 2 steps, 3 and 4, and you'll see a lot of the stuff is similar to what we've just seen. In terms of implementation options, a really good milestone configuration, and that's not easy, plus some kind of on-hold case status you need. So something where your milestone, in my case, isn't applying. And then I've got some process builder or flow or apex. What you do is dependent on your skills and how you want to do it, but I'd use process builder for this one, I think. So here's my milestones. So I've got escalations, follow-up, resolution, response, restoration. The recurrence type is a black art. So if you think you know it, then read again, try again, test it, retest, scratch your head. Is it independent or is it sequential or is it recurrent? It's not easy to get those right and spend some time on it. And then I've got my milestone rules here. And what we see here on my follow-up milestone, for example, based on the priority, I've got different response times for my SLA. And I've got only including this milestone when the case is open with us. So when it's new in progress, it's with our first line support. When it's an escalation, it's with our second and third line support. So it's an escalation as a different SLA for that. So that's how I've configured it in this org. If we look at the process from up top, what we can consider here is I've got a case process or I've got case trigger. The case, I determine my business rules, whether that's on hold or not. I set that case stop to true to start that case stop to timer. I complete those open milestones as we saw on the previous step. And then I'll probably use some time-based actions to send customers a reminder saying, this has been stopped for 5 days. Do you have an update, 7 days, etc. So it's my business process for how I want to follow up on that. Equally, once that customer's responded, was sent an email, added a comment on our community, maybe had a live chat session. I then want to stop that case from sorry, I want to cancel that case stopped. So I set case stop to false. And I want to set the status back to the appropriate open state, to escalated or in progress in our case. Finally, the case close automation. So customers will generally contact you when they have a problem and be very quick to contact you when they have a problem, probably several times of the same problem. But when it's working, they're less likely to get in touch. They've got their normal job to be done. We've all done this. The problem's gone away. Oh, sorry, I forgot to tell you. Or do you know what? It's probably not my burning issue of the day because it's no longer a problem. So at Provar, what we do is we have a case resolve status. And when a case is moved to resolved with resolution reason, we notify the customer the case is going to be closed in so many days. But if they disagree, they can get back in touch and we'll reopen it. However, if a case is awaiting customer, so if it's in that feedback loop, then I'll send some warnings after a defined period, give them another warning, and then I'm going to automatically close that case. There's no point having that case sitting around, hitting my case numbers or appearing a larger backlog for my support team if there's no response from the customer, so they're unresponsive. And the way I preferred to implement this was, again, using Process Builder and using scheduled actions. Could have used an Apex scheduler. Anyone that's written Apex written scheduled Apex knows the amount of work it takes. It just isn't necessary. So in Process Builder, I can have my time lapse, my scheduled actions, very easy to configure, very easy for our admins to up these times. So they actually changed these after I launched this. So I think it's now 7 days on the first one and 14 days on the second one. So it was very easy to edit that and make adjustments to our business based on the timings we wanted to do without requiring a developer to change anything. So let's move on to the demonstration. I have a video we can watch, but what I'm going to do instead is use our tool Provar as my demo assistant. What we can see here is I have an open account. That account is a prospect and it has an opportunity, no entitlements. And I'm just going to start playing through this and hopefully we should see, I'm going to win the open opportunity on this account. Remember, we had existing processing to change that account into a customer, into an active customer once the opportunity was closed won. And what I did was piggyback that so that what we'd also do is create an entitlement. So that's closed one. Now we're going to navigate back to the account record. Just while we're doing that, I've sent an email in the background using Provar. And we're going to see that as a case later. So we can see customer status is now active. And over on the right-hand side under the quick links, we can see I now have an entitlement as well. And it's the correct SLA for the product that they've purchased. That's brilliant. That's working exactly as I intended. I did that email send message from Provar so that I would have something in my case queue at the right step. Obviously, email to case is not instantaneous. So I'm just going to pad for 1 more second and hope that when I resume that that's sitting in our instant queue. There we go, that's sitting there. So we're going to select that case. And what I want to do is check that that case has the right entitlement. The case entitlement is populated. There we go on the right-hand side. And what I now want to do is automate that case path. So I'm sending an email to reply to that customer as the first response. What we should see, if everything's working okay in my solution, we'll see the case status move forward to in progress. There we go, that hasn't worked, okay? So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to pause it there. Well, let's send another one. Let's send another one and see what happens. Okay, that's paused. So I'm going to manually move that to in progress, which is what should have happened automatically. So Provar's found an issue there. You'll see my case milestone there was completed when I moved to in progress. I did not hit the mark completed box. Let's see if when we send a follow-up, this time it goes to a waiting customer. So I'm now testing if that's working. So again, Provar's controlling the screen for me. Let's put another email to John Smith in and send him a bit more information. Fingers crossed this time that my solution's working. There we go, awaiting customer. So I'm not going to take this all the way through to resolved and closed. Hopefully you can see there that there's automation happening. I wasn't touching the screen, that's why I use this. You can see that things can be transitioned, but I do need to see where my bug is on that first response in my process builder. If you'd like to learn more, I've published the unmanaged package and an SFDX project at that GitHub location. It does use Daniel Host's test data factory, which I do recommend. And it is worth looking at the admin's guide to automation, entitlement automation. And if you want that Apex code to correctly autocomplete case milestones, that's available in the link there as well. I do recommend you use the right App Exchange apps in addition, and do follow the Trailhead content. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Blockchain can help feed more people. And AI can help care for people. VR can help train people. Let's use technology for people to make a greater good in every community, every day. Accenture. New applied now.